There are places in the world that don't ask how much you've accumulated, don't require an investment plan, and don't demand proof of status. What they are looking for is presence. Someone willing to stay, build a life, and remain long enough to become part of the place itself. This is not a story about privileged visas or fast-track citizenship. It is a story about homes with locked doors, towns growing quieter as children disappear, and countries that understand money cannot replace people. Affordable housing, family-focused incentives, and practical residency pathways exist not out of generosity, but because these places need real lives rooted there. Before we go any further, one important clarification must be made. Every country mentioned in this video follows a one-spouse marriage law. This content does not promote, endorse, or encourage polygamy in any form. References to historical practices are included only to help us understand why family once played a vital role in societies facing war, migration, and population decline. In those moments, family was not merely a personal bond, it was the foundation that allowed communities to survive. And in this video, we will explore 5 countries where people matter more than capital, where you don't need to stand out or be wealthy, only willing to stay alive honestly and help carry a way of life forward. Country 5. Vietnam. Here, family is not just about emotion. Family is an economy. It is a system that allows people to survive, adapt, and stay standing when everything around them becomes uncertain. A day begins very early. Morning markets open while the streets are still quiet. Vendors recognize faces, buyers know names. These relationships are not built on contracts, but on trust accumulated over time. By midday, meals are rarely just for those under one roof. Neighbors stop by, an extra pair of chopsticks is added. Another conversation begins. By evening, if a household is missing something, help often arrives before the question is even asked. Low living costs in Vietnam do more than help people get by, they make it possible to think about starting a family. In provincial areas and smaller cities, rent typically ranges from about $150 to $300 per month. Food is simple. Distances are short, and daily needs are not artificially inflated. When financial pressure eases, people can focus on building a shared life rather than merely surviving alone. Vietnam does not offer formal family incentives written clearly into policy documents. Instead, it has a powerful social support system rooted in family, extended relatives, and community. When someone marries, they do not step into a new chapter by themselves. Parents contribute, siblings assist, relatives stand behind them. This is not government aid, it is a survival network shaped over generations. From a legal standpoint, one point must be made clear. Vietnam enforces a one-spouse marriage law. Polygamy is strictly prohibited in modern society. Historically, polygamy did exist in ancient agricultural societies when land, manual labor, and children determined a family's survival. But that belongs to the past. Today, Vietnamese families are smaller, yet their bonds are stronger. People may live far apart, but emotional ties and shared responsibility are rarely severed. Vietnam suits those who value human connection and are comfortable living within a system where the individual is closely linked to the collective. Here, people check in on you, ask about your life, and pull you closer, sometimes more than you may be used to. But this country is not for everyone. If you need absolute personal space, rigid boundaries, or feel uncomfortable with constant social closeness, you may find the environment overwhelming. Vietnam does not promise a perfect life. What it offers instead is something increasingly rare, the feeling that you are not facing life on your own. Country 4. Paraguay. A country with more land than people, where open space stretches endlessly, while the population remains surprisingly sparse. And what stands out most is this: they are not trying to keep outsiders away. They are inviting people to stay. Life in Paraguay unfolds horizontally, not vertically. Low houses, wide roofs, and open yards blend into gardens and empty land. In many areas, people live close to the ground in the most literal sense. They grow, food-raise animals, fix their own homes, and handle much of daily life themselves. The rhythm is slow, quiet, and far less dependent on complex service systems. Low living costs are one of the main reasons Paraguay attracts those stepping away from financial pressure. Renting a home in rural areas or small towns typically ranges from about $150 to $300 per month. A comfortable, modest lifestyle usually falls between $500 and $700. Land is inexpensive and abundant, and in many places, local authorities encourage long-term settlement, especially from those willing to stay, cultivate, and contribute. Paraguay is not chasing short-term capital. Its focus is population revival. As younger generations leave rural areas for cities or foreign countries, villages slowly empty out. Affordable land and accessible living conditions are not random benefits, but part of a long-term strategy to keep communities alive. From a legal perspective, one point must be clearly stated. Paraguay enforces a one-spouse marriage law. Polygamy is not recognized in modern society. Historically, large families were a way for Paraguay to recover from severe population losses. Children were not only emotional bonds, but labor continuity and the future of villages. That legacy still shapes rural culture today, where communities remain tightly connected and people rely on one another more than on formal systems. Paraguay is well suited for those who want low costs, wide land, and are willing to trade modern conveniences for freedom and quiet. But it is not for everyone. If you depend on high-end infrastructure, fast services, or a highly developed urban environment, Paraguay may feel too slow and too remote. Paraguay is not glamorous, but for those who understand the value of land space and long-term resilience, it remains a place with room for people who are willing to stay. Country 3. Albania. A stretch of Mediterranean coastline, clear blue water, soft sunlight, as beautiful as southern Italy, yet the cost of living is roughly 1/3 of the price. Albania is the kind of place that surprises people not because of luxury, but because it has not been fully consumed yet. Life here moves slowly and with intention. Mornings begin with coffee by the sea, unhurried and quiet. At midday, local farmers' markets come alive, seasonal vegetables, freshly caught fish, familiar faces on both sides of the stall. Evenings are reserved for large family meals, long tables, simple dishes, and conversations that flow without planning. Community is woven into every part of the day. Low living costs make this community-centered lifestyle possible. In rural areas and small towns, monthly rent typically ranges from $150 to $300. In some regions facing population decline, local authorities support housing for young couples and prioritize families willing to settle long-term. These are not incentives designed to attract short-term capital, but practical efforts to keep villages alive. Legally, Albania follows a one-spouse marriage system. Polygamy is not legally recognized in modern Albanian society. What makes Albania distinct is not its laws, but its cultural foundation. Historically, the Kanun Albania's traditional code placed hospitality and family at the center of social life. Family was not merely a private bond, but a matter of honor, a form of social protection, and a source of stability when formal institutions were distant or weak. Traces of the Kanun remain today in the warmth of Albanian hospitality, the sense of responsibility toward relatives, and the way communities stand together in times of need. Albania is well suited for those who love the sea, value human connection, and are comfortable with a slower Balkan rhythm. It offers closeness to nature and to people in exchange for less noise and pressure. But Albania is not for everyone. If you depend on speed instant services or feel uncomfortable with a deeply communal pace of life, you may struggle to adapt. Albania does not try to become the next global hub. It quietly preserves older values for those willing to stay. Country. 2. Moldova. There are places on the map that don't disappear because of war or collapse from natural disaster, but quietly fade because no one lives there anymore. In Moldova, some villages are left with only a few dozen elderly residents. What they fear most is not poverty, but the day when there is no one left to carry this life forward. Life in Moldova feels like a slow-moving film. Low garden houses are scattered across open land with wide yards and seasonal fruit trees. Beneath the ground are family wine cellars, where bottles are not stored for sale, but for memory. Meals are rarely shared by just two people. Relatives, neighbors, familiar faces gather around the table. The rhythm is calm and unhurried, and daily life relies far more on community than on modern service systems. The cost of living in Moldova is low enough to surprise many outsiders. Renting a home in rural areas or small towns typically costs around $150 to $300 per month. What truly sets the country apart is how it tries to keep people from leaving. In more remote regions, houses may be sold for a symbolic price, with a clear condition the buyer must live there long term. Local authorities often help with renovations, connect newcomers to nearby residents, and support their integration into village life. From a legal standpoint, it is important to be clear. Moldova follows a one-spouse marriage law and does not recognize polygamy in modern society. Family-oriented policies here are not about alternative marriage structures, but about a very practical need to keep people living in places that are slowly emptying out. Historically, large families were the backbone of rural Eastern Europe. As economic hardship and migration spread, younger generations left, leaving behind villages that grew older and quieter each year. Moldova is not trying to replace people with investment capital or large development projects. It is looking for people willing to stay, tend gardens, share meals, and become part of the community. Moldova is well suited for those who want peace, low costs, and a slower pace of life, even one where sometimes nothing happens at all. But it is not for everyone. If you depend on urban convenience, fast services, or the constant movement of city life, Moldova may feel like stepping out of the modern current. Moldova does not promise a glamorous future. But for villages waiting for people to return, simply being there and living genuinely is often enough to keep a place from disappearing. Country. 1. Georgia. There are places where you don't need permission to stay. You simply stay. Georgia is one of the rare countries where long-term presence doesn't begin with complicated paperwork, but with a very ordinary decision choosing to live here one more day. Mornings in Tbilisi begin with a strong coffee on the balcony overlooking old streets shaped by a blend of European and Asian influences. The city wakes slowly without pressure. By midday, it's fresh bread, local cheese, and produce from a nearby market. As evening arrives, homemade wine appears, and a neighbor may invite you to share the table as if you've belonged here for years. Living costs in Georgia are relatively manageable. Monthly rent typically falls between $300 and $500. A stable, comfortable lifestyle, neither extravagant nor sparse, often totals around $1,000 to $1,200 per month. In some rural areas, local authorities offer home renovation support and run village retention programs, encouraging people who are willing to commit and help sustain community life. From a legal standpoint, Georgia follows a one-spouse marriage system. Polygamy does not exist in the country's modern legal framework. What makes Georgia distinctive is not legal exceptions, but the way social life is organized around people. Historically, in the Caucasus region, family and hospitality have formed the backbone of society. In Georgia, there is a long-held belief that a guest is a blessing. Strangers are welcomed with respect, and relationships often become familiar quickly. This sense of closeness creates a feeling of belonging that many people seek after leaving increasingly distant societies. Georgia appeals to those who value flexibility in residency, appreciate straightforward procedures, and want time to adapt before making long-term commitments. Living here allows you to observe experience and understand local rhythms without being rushed. At the same time, people who prioritize large-scale international work environments, multinational corporations, and dense global professional networks may find such opportunities more limited. Georgia does not emphasize rapid career acceleration. Instead, it offers space for a different way of living, one where staying and settling in takes priority. Perhaps the most important question after this journey is not where you would move, but what kind of system you want to live within. The countries we've explored don't promise quick wealth guaranteed status or a perfect life, but they do offer a different kind of invitation. One for people willing to stay and build a life at a slower pace and become part of a community rather than simply pass through it. In these places, your value isn't measured by how much money you bring, but by your daily presence, by sharing meals, living in rhythm with others, and helping keep a place from disappearing from the human map. You may not be ready to go just yet, but knowing that there are still places that need people more than capital can feel like a quiet form of freedom. If this video made you think, leave a comment with the country that sparked your curiosity the most. And if you'd like to keep exploring places where life is slower and more grounded, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Because sometimes what you're really searching for isn't the best place to arrive at, but the place willing to let you stay.